Hi, thank you so much for being here. My name is Yatatu, and today I have Dr. Adeniyi, who is here as an assistant professor in the Faculty of Arts, who I'm so happy took some time out of her day to come and talk to me about her career and her pathway in academics. So my first question is just generally, you study in the area of English, and that's like your wheelhouse, kind of. And I was just wondering what you specifically specialize in or what your research is based in currently.
Okay, so I teach creative writing as well as post-colonial writing, Black speculative writing, and also Black women's Afrofuturist writings. So, yeah.
That's a large course load you're doing.
I know it's a mouthful, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but my current research actually is on the politics of death in the works of Black women Afrofuturist writers.
That's very fascinating. I know I am minoring in English, and something that the university has is so many English courses, and if you want it, the university probably has it in sense of English writing. My next question is kind of going back a little bit to when you were younger. Growing up, did you know that this is something that you wanted to do? Was academics always in your mind, or when did you, in school, know that academics was the pathway that you wanted to take?
Okay, so when I was a young girl, I wanted to write stories, just be a writer, okay? And I had the mom who inspired me. She told me I could be anything that I wanted to be, okay? And then I went to the university to study literature. And then I was introduced to a number of very warm, inspiring, great, and passionate professors. And I realized that I wanted to be like them. Okay, yeah. So in a way, they sold the profession to me because they taught with a great level of care. And the zeal was so much there and was so contagious, all right? And by the time I was done with my first year in the university, I just knew that I'll end up in the classroom.
That is so fascinating to hear, as I grew up with parents who are teachers and professors, and I spent time at the university now as a student, and it is a little bit contagious, the feeling of having someone inspire you in the classroom and thinking that you in turn could do the same for someone else. So is there anyone in specific, any professor or teacher or anyone who really inspired you or influenced your teaching?
Oh, there are so many of them. Yeah, so many. I mean, I was taught by the famous Professor Shundari. He taught me privately how to write poems. And I was also taught by Professor Chima Anyadike, Baba Adekoya. All of those were very good professors in Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. And somehow these very inspiring professors and also writers helped me in my journey. Of course, I've come across so many other professors, right? I've studied in Nigeria, in the United Kingdom, and then in Canada, and I've met so many people, and they've always been a source of inspiration to me. Also remember that during my formative years, I had teachers too. So at every phase in my life, I've had people who nurtured me, who made me realize that there must always be people who would raise the next generation of teachers. And I'm actually glad that I'm a part of them now. Yeah.
Was there anything that any of those teachers or profs or mentors specifically did that you now have taken and do in your own classroom or in your own mentorship?
Yes, I learned a lot from them, especially the fact that they had a very unique relationship with their students. I remember back at Obafemi Awolowo University, would have all of those very intensive class moments where we'll be arguing about different things. So they allowed us to do that. They allowed our voices to thrive. They gave us the ability to believe in ourselves and the fact that we can actually have an opinion and then own those opinions and, not feel so bad about having a particular conviction. That could happen on a Friday, for instance, and then on a Saturday you are in their homes, having dinner or lunch. So, it was a kind of immersive teaching. It was way beyond the classroom. And I think I also bring that personal touch to bear in my own classes now. The first thing I do in my class is to master the names of all my students. Yes, I do that all the time. And I equally tell them that they have to know the names of everyone in the class, because we are not just here to discuss the text, we are also here to discuss the world and get to know ourselves better, all right? So I wasn't so surprised when in one of my classes, the students felt that they wanted an afterlife for the kind of connection that they've had in class, and the classroom morphed into a group outside of the university where they meet periodically to discuss their writings. And I got that from my professors. So those professors actually taught me how to make teaching and learning a robust experience in such a way that it becomes memorable to the student.
That is so important, to be able to foster a community in a space that school is, it's very social at lunch and at, your breaks, but to be able to have that community in a classroom is something that's very special and very unique, I think. In a lot of classes, that doesn't happen. One thing we have here at the U of W is smaller class sizes, smaller, depending on who you ask. So that's very fascinating that you were able to create a community with your students that they still have today. I'm curious to know, you've been in school your whole life, whether it was teaching or being a student, that when you eventually did become a professor and started to teach, the switch from student to professor, and how that transition was for you, if it came naturally or if it was something that you had to work at a bit, or was it something that you always knew was going to be easy for you?
Well, I think it was pretty easy transitioning, right, from a student to a professor. In fact, I got my job here while I was completing my PhD. So I'll teach students in the morning and afternoon, and late at night I'm poring over my research to ensure that I also meet my deadlines, okay? So it wasn't really the case that I had like a gap and then I had to think through about the process. There was nothing like that, An opportunity came, and it was so good and productive to have both of them coincide. In fact, I think the pressures of being a professor also helped, in getting the PhD out of the way. So yes, to answer your question.
So being able to balance both sounds, I'm only an undergrad student, and I cannot imagine doing my PhD, finishing it, and being a professor at the same time. But you said that it helped you, it fueled both, kind of.
It does help with the discipline.
Yeah.
The thing again about graduate school is that you spend so much time doing nothing. Actually, you're trying to do it, attend a conference, you're trying to write a paper.
Yes.
But in between those commitments, you have a lot of wasted time. So when you're teaching, alongside those commitments, it helps with actually being focused, right?
So you mentioned that you, obviously you went to school in Nigeria, you spent time in the UK, and now in Canada, which all three I think are fairly different, just culturally, but what was the difference you noticed academically in these three places? Was there differences even just in how you pursued your education there? Was there different standards or different things you had to meet in each country?
Interestingly, I only had 12 students in my class in Nigeria, so it allowed us to bond a lot. And I didn't understand that privilege until I went to the UK, and then I was thrown into a class of 50 students. And that was pretty hard, being in that class and being the only African student also in that class. But of course, I learned a lot of things from my education there. The fact that I'm a Black person in the world, something I'd never really had the chance to think about whilst I was in Nigeria. And moving to Canada was, of course, another story entirely. You know, the climate was so different, and the teachers were equally very good, right? And of course, the education was very intense, right? So if you look at it, you'd realize that I've been nurtured through all of these stages into becoming the person I am today. So when I stand in a multicultural classroom, such as I do have in the University of Winnipeg, for instance, I do understand the specific needs of the different students in the class.
That is something that's so important, having kind of a world education, is just you have so much to pull on and so much more knowledge from everywhere, really. And I mean, because all three places are so different, you must have just soaked up so much knowledge from every corner of the world.
But it's also an humbling experience.
Yeah.
The fact that the more you move, the more you realize and understand so much more about the world, all right? So the process of learning really has been unlearning, you know, unlearning a lot of things that were preconceived ideas, wrong preconceived ideas, and then getting to know more about the world and learning the truth.
So my next question, you touched on it a little bit, but what were some significant challenges that you have ran into pursuing your career in academics? I know you mentioned being in a really big class in the UK, and then even just moving and having to restart twice in different places, academically and personally, that just I can't imagine would be big challenges and big differences to work through. So is there any you can highlight specifically in your career?
Well, in all my life, schooling has always been fun because I've done that for a long time, as much as I can remember. But I must say that the pandemic gave me a pause.
Yes.
Yeah. Before then, I was a PhD student that was traveling, going for conferences, reading from a novel I previously published, and then writing short stories and reading them to people. But then COVID hit all of us, and everything changed, okay? So everything was within 4 walls. It was a bit lonesome, alienating, and tedious. So I must say that COVID brought a different dynamics into my studies, and I must say that that was a challenging time for me. I just wanted to finish because I just felt, you know, I felt exhausted at that point. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, COVID, that entire period of time, specifically for people in the academic fields, was hard to be able to connect and, you know, like you said, go to all these conferences, whatever, and now to have them moved online and to have, how do you network? How do you talk to someone through the Zoom call? It was something so challenging for everyone to navigate and work through. On that note, so another challenge that I've talked with some professors about is just the lack of Black professors in Canada as a whole. And as of 2019-2020, so it's a bit of a dated study, the DIC report from the University of Ottawa came out that Black professors make up only 2% of the professors in Canada. Yes, a very small amount. And with that in mind, is there anything that the University of Winnipeg has done well to support you as a Black professor? And just citing the other places you've been to as well, what was different about being at the UK, and if there were Black professors there, and obviously Nigeria, it wouldn't have, I'm sure 2% is not the number that they would have there, but what were some differences or challenges that you faced in those spaces? Okay.
Well, I must first say that the University of Winnipeg has tried, okay, but can they do more? Of course, they can. And what I would say basically is that there should be targeted funding for Black research, okay? A research that focuses Black subjects, okay? And when you fund such a research, you are actually amplifying our voices, and then you are giving us visibility.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that while the university, I think, as I spoke with someone earlier, has broad strokes, or in Canada, it's often marginalized communities, and that's the term that they use when they say, we're working to fund research for marginalized communities, we're working whatever, that it's really important to have the specifics, is what you're saying, that to be detailed and intentional in their work.
Yeah,
absolutely. So my, not last question, my closing, wrapping up, if there were any like specific research or projects or even committees that you've been on that you are most proud of in your career, that is like a highlight or a tentpole in your career?
Well, presently I'm the head of the Special Programs Committee in the English department, and I'm so proud about what we've done in the last few months. So we've been able to revive the departmental speaker series, which is a very good initiative to have the members of faculty discuss their research in a very comfortable atmosphere. So I'm so glad that we've been able to do that, and that it's a continuing project even next year.
That is an amazing feat, and I think that, having that space is really important. To have you be head of it is even more important at the university. To, like you said, amplify a voice, but to be head of a committee and really be intentional in that space. And my last question is, if you have any advice for young Black academics. I'm an undergraduate student who has enjoyed her time at the U of W so far. I've had so much fun. But if there's any advice academically in spaces of academia, what advice would you give young Black students?
Well, it's the advice I'll give myself, and it's a principle I live by. It's basically to be comfortable, within my space. Yeah. Okay? Be very confident about what I do. And I shouldn't feel the need, to overwork myself, because I feel that so much is required from a Black person. Just do my best and leave the rest. So I guess that's that. Yeah. That
is great advice, and I think something that myself and many other students will be able to hold on to. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really, really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing your experiences. I know sometimes it's not hard, but awkward to go through the whole pathway, but I really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much for speaking with me today.
You're welcome.
And thank you very much for watching.